Hello guys, Termex here, and welcome back to another Wonderlands video. Today I do want to talk about Chaos 35 and my issues with Chaos 35. Now recently there was a DLC update for Wonderlands which added 15 more Chaos levels, giving us 35 from, of course, 20. And I have noticed recently that it is a pretty significant bump when it comes to all the health values and our damage values. But I have done some of the math, and it seems that we got a 6 to 9% increase on all of our gear. This includes guns, rings, any of the sort of stuff like that. But we get over a 500% HP increase when it comes from Chaos 20 to Chaos 35. And that is just ridiculous. A 500% HP increase, but we only get 6 to 9% per piece of gear. So even if all of our gear had those percentages, we're only talking a 70% buff to our character, and then we have a 500% buff to the enemies. And the guns that were great before that you just buffed are now bad because everything is a walking sponge. And I don't want to say every single thing is, because a lot of things are not. Like I said before, Chaos 35 is inherently fine. My biggest issue is when it comes to the raid bosses and some of the ads. We have the evil claw crabs now at Chaos 35 that feel like mini bosses just because of how many bullets they eat. And now I'm not going from the perspective of a spell shot build. I'm not talking about spell shot builds. I'm not talking about blast chill hitting for infinite damage because the way blast chill works. I'm talking about actual like other builds that other people use, like maybe Stavomancer with Fadeaway or Boar Warden with Blizzards. Things like that just feel completely obsolete at the moment. I might be wrong, but show me a Blizzard build where the Blizzards are killing anything at Chaos 35. And that's where I say the diversity is just so severely limited. It is very aggravating that with this update, half of the builds that we had before just poof out of existence because, well, things are more tanky. I think Chaos 20 was a perfect balance when it came to damage on raid bosses and damage on enemies. Elite rooms favored people that did elite guns and elite builds when it came to Chaos Chamber, and elite rooms felt great. But elite rooms on Chaos 35 feel like I'm shooting into brick walls, or better yet, into sponge walls, because every single ad feels like a mini-boss. Now, there is the exception of some enemies where obviously it feels the same, but elite rooms felt elite, but current elite rooms feel like a chore just to slog through the enemies. You shouldn't be restricted to the best builds in the game just to do said contents, because then we would have another Borderlands 2 on our hands, and I don't think anybody wants that. Not saying Borderlands 2 was bad, but a lot of Borderlands 2 was heavily saturated when it came to Sandhawk, when it came to the B-Shield, when it came to using the same exact builds on similar characters just because that was needed when it came to raid bosses or anything of that sort. And I don't want the same for Wonderlands, but from my experience with this update, a lot of builds just feel lackluster, and you're so much better off pulling out a spell shot, pulling out a blast chill build, using faithful thralls on Graveborn. Sure, those are all great builds, but not every player in the game is using those exact builds, and I think that's where the problem is, or at least something that we should be focusing on, because diversity was a key factor in Wonderlands. You gave us 6 classes, the ability to multi-class. The fact that we didn't get skill points this update shows that the diversity is there, but then we went off and killed it because half the legendaries in the game aren't even that great. Most purple weapons in the game are the meta. Purple weapons are just significantly better than legendaries, which is how it shouldn't really be. What's the point of legendaries when, well, everything else is just simply better? Like, be honest, who's going to farm a legendary item when this purple SMG or a purple shotgun just does way more damage and it's way easier to obtain? And legendaries kind of lose their love and their feel when it comes to those sort of things, because who wants to do it? Just honestly, I wanted something like Borderlands 3 where diversity was always key. Borderlands 3, sure, it had its meta, but I've made so many builds with even flak in that game, and you could really be diverse and be different from the meta and still do content. Heck, I'm pretty sure a lot of people finished the Maliwan takedown with a infinity pistol because you could. You had that sort of freedom within that game, but with this Chaos 35 update, it feels like it has been limited 100 times over, and I just hope this isn't the future of Wonderlands, because I don't want everything to be spell shot, buffmeister, blast chill, melee damage again. Melee damage plagued Borderlands 3 for a long time with the face puncher, ground breaker, rack stab, a lot of things. Borderlands 3's best damage was in the form of melee. But like I said before, my biggest issue is with the raid bosses, because the raid bosses feel like absolute tanks. Like, we used to be able to one-phase gloop, and I don't think players are obligated to one-phase gloop, but we should at least get damage from our build. With a build that melts normal bosses, or even gloop, for example, I expected it to be half-decent after this patch, and when I farmed up some volatile gear, I had more volatiles. I even snagged a primordial on my main character, and I couldn't even 3-phase the boss because, well, the HP was just so much. I was hitting for 300,000 damage per bullet, but it felt like it was such a slog, and the only time I was able to do damage in the raid boss phases was when they put up their little orbs. You know how when Barkenstein puts up his purple orb, or the snake dude puts up his yellow orb, or the gloop turns into an orb. That's the only times I felt like I could do damage, and that just makes for a very stale gameplay loop. I get it if the raid bosses have mechanics, and some of them already do, but they shouldn't all share the same mechanic of wait for the big circle to pop up, then shoot the big circle. You're not really even fighting the boss at that point and learning the mechanics. You're just dodging the boss until the raid boss shows its weak spot, and then you're gonna finally shoot an orb. It's never been that way. Even with Borderlands 2, what did we do with raid bosses? We didn't just stare at them and shoot them. Vermi was hell to fight, but he was sure fun to fight. The Chaos 20 version of these raid bosses were just fine in my opinion, and felt balanced, and they didn't feel tanky whatsoever. They felt like a good medium between you need to do the mechanics, but at the same time, we're not going to lock the player to waiting for the orb to pop up for them to play the game. But I could already assure you that in the coming week, we're going to see a big buff fest from Gearbox. You can use this video as a, I guess, early proof of that happening, and maybe I'm wrong, but I could really see them buffing a bunch of things next week for the sake that it makes us seem this isn't a broken thing, when clearly it is. I just want to make this video to talk about that, because yes, I get it, builds aren't dead, but a lot of build diversity was killed with this update, and I think more people need to shed light to that, because not everybody runs meta. I get it, a lot of people do, but the whole game is based on diversity, and Chaos 35 indirectly ruins that, in my opinion, in its current states. And if they're going to make it so we need to catch up, if we want to do damage, we need to get those primordials. Well, the only way to get primordials is if I'm on Chaos 35, so how do you expect me to do the damage on Chaos 35 when I don't get the primordials that only drop at Chaos 35? And another big confusing thing is when it comes to things like volatiles, we were fighting a 1% drop chance for the first month of this game's release, and with this update, they raised it to 17%. So why would I farm primordials now at another 1% chance when you guys are just going to increase the cap in a month or two, and then make it a 17% chance, then have Ascendeds be the next big thing? That doesn't make much sense to me. You're kind of indirectly telling your players, oh yeah, fight this 1% chance, but in a month, that's a 17% chance. It doesn't make sense, and it kind of confuses me on why we would waste our time farming for it now. But that's just my rant, guys. I really notice it with Chaos 35, but I'd like to know what you guys think, because maybe I'm wrong and I'm ranting about something that doesn't exist. But from my experience, that's how I feel in basically how I seen this update. If you did enjoy today's video, make sure you guys leave a like on it, as it helps me out a lot and spreads my content more out to the Wonderlands and the Borderlands 3 community. And consider subscribing if you never want to miss out on another video from me. But you guys have a terrific day, and I'll see you guys later.